Hello, everyone. We will start tonight's meeting with a call to order. James Bell.
Here.
Amy Callan. Here. Brian Chetney.
Here.
Tom DeCastro.
Here.
Brandon LeGros.
Here.
Linda Serino.
Still tomorrow.
Sam Tripp.
Here.
Alexandra Cummings.
Here.
If you would all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just wanted to point out to the members of the school board, there is a document on your seat from the internal claims auditor that was asked for by board member. Just wanted to let you know that it is there. And we will start tonight with a presentation from Thomas Zuber. And are we all set? Good.
Stand or Tommy can sit. Right. Tom, as you know, does our auditing, and he did a presentation 2 weeks ago for our audit committee, and we invited him back to give a summary presentation to the full board.
Great. And, you should have in your board packets both the financial statement, the internal control communication, as well as an executive summary. And I won't go through all of the documents as the superintendent had indicated. We met with the audit committee back on October 3rd, and we reviewed the financial statements. And we talked, had a very good conversation. We talked about year-over-year variances. We talked about reserve accounts. We talked about fund balance. We talked about budget variances. We discussed internal controls and checks and balances. So we had a very good discussion relating to the financial condition of the school district. And, like many schools in the state, school districts continue to face challenges relating to state aid uncertainties, relating to pension costs. You've got health insurance cost challenges out there, as well as the property tax cap. As you know, that's one of those challenges that all districts face. And it really puts a cap on the revenue that the school district can raise. Okay. So we did have a good discussion, and those challenges are out there for all school districts. And the school district did do a very good job this year in kind of dealing and reacting to some of those challenges. And the district did end the year in a very positive financial condition. Okay. The end of the year with about $17 million in reserves and fund balance. Okay. Which again, that's up about $4.5 million from last year. And as part of that process, the district did appropriate about $1.4 million in fund balance to offset the 17-18 tax levy. So of some of those dollars generated this year through budgetary savings, through generating revenue in excess of what you had anticipated, you allocated some of those dollars back against the budget for the 17-18 year. In addition to that, you did appropriate some reserve accounts to support the 17-18 budget. So the district went from appropriating zero in fund balance and reserves in the prior year to appropriating about $4.3 million to support the 17-18 budget. So a very large gap increase from last year to this year. And as you know, part of that was planned relating to some of the carryover balances from last year. But again, a very significant jump to use fund balance and reserves to support the following year budget. And part of that was the liquidation of one of the reserves that you have, the tax certiorari reserve. That's one of the reserves you appropriated to support the 17-18 budget, okay? Because the district looked at that, said it was overfunded, so they're applying a little over $2 million of that reserve to support the 17-18 budget. So that's an area that we've talked to the district in the past about, is you want to closely monitor that appropriated fund balance and reserve number, because if that gets too high, you have to generate surpluses just to break even, okay? Otherwise, you begin to erode fund balance. And the district over the past few years had to make some tough challenges or decisions because you were eroding fund balance and reserves. And as a result of the decisions you made over the past few years, you were able to generate surpluses this year. And you were able to allocate some of those dollars into reserves. So it really is a result of some of the difficult decisions that you made in the past, and it would allow you to help with your budget process going forward. So again, the district has done a good job with regard to the year-end finances. In addition to using some of those reserves, the district also funded the remaining surplus into the reserve account. So you've allocated some money into the reserves, but you're also going to be pulling some of those dollars out of the reserves in this current year, okay? And of course, the reserve that the district allocated about $4 million to is that capital reserve, the building reserve, which really is a very beneficial reserve to have out there. It is one of the most restrictive reserves because the voters actually vote to approve to create the reserve for the purpose that's outlined in the proposition. The board then funds the reserve, and then the voters approve the use of that reserve. So the voters are very involved in the utilization of that reserve, and those reserves are really beneficial when you're looking at a large capital project because you can support the local dollars of a project to really reduce the local tax burden of that project. So capital reserves are very, very beneficial when it comes to the long-term financial condition of school districts. So again, the voters originally approved a $7 million capital reserve, and the district has funded that capital reserve about $5.2 million this year, okay, or through the years, all right? And one of the other transactions that took place this year is that the voters also voted to utilize some of the capital reserve dollars this year to support some of the renovations that were happening in the district this year. So again, you've got that capital reserve, the voters were involved in creating it, the voters voted to use some of those dollars, and then the board refunded into that reserve some of those dollars. So again, you're using those reserves as you develop and design those, okay? So again, very positive from an overall financial condition. Again, we did have a lot of good discussion relating to the financial condition of the district. In addition to the actual numbers, the general fund, we also talked about the school lunch program, and that program has really begun to show some positive results over the past few years. Although there's still a deficit overall fund balance, the district has begun to erode that down. So you want to continue to look at that and to look to try and continue to enhance the revenues that are being generated by that program. So again, moving in the right direction with the school lunch operation. So again, very positive from the financial condition standpoint. Okay, so those were the key items in the financial statement. In addition to the audit, the numbers or the basic financial statements, we also issued the internal control communication. As part of the audit, we review the different internal controls and checks and balances the district has over the different financial cycles. So the payroll processing, you know, how employees report and communicate their time to the district in order for the payroll to be processed, and what checks and balances you have over those programs. I'm pleased to report there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. We do have some minor procedural recommendations that are included in the internal control communication that we talked about with the audit committee. I'm also pleased to report there were 5 items that we had discussed in the past that the district did implement corrective action on. So again, very positive from the financial condition and the financial statement standpoint. It shows that the district, the board, management is reacting to our recommendations and implementing corrective action. So again, very positive from the risk assessment standpoint. Okay. So again, overall, very positive results of the audit. You're developing and utilizing your reserve accounts, very positive. So you want to continue to monitor and manage the appropriated fund balance and appropriated reserves, because you don't want it to get too high, because then it becomes more difficult to manage going forward. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Howard.
Thanks, Todd.
At this time, Dr. Buell, do you want the next presentation? Or would
Yeah,
you
they're
like
all
to-
part of the superintendent's report, including Mr. Zuber's report. So the next presentation during, under the superintendent's report is a summary of the financial reports that are regularly part of the board packet. There was some interest in having Nancy do a summary presentation about all those elements of the financial portion of our agenda from meeting to meeting. And she's done this for us in the past, and it's nice to have her do this presentation in an open meeting, but certainly she's always available to do small group gigs and individual audiences. Nancy,
Do you rest in doing those too?
at home. Do you need the light stands?
It might be easier for them to see.
Bob?
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, thanks.
So this is just going to be a really quick overview of the financial statements that you have in your packet. Some you have in your current packet, some you had at the previous board meeting. But this is just going to review what those reports are and how you should be looking at them. And if you have any questions, as the superintendent said, you can email me as long as you make sure that the superintendent is copied, and I will respond to the full board with your question and any response. Okay.
Maybe.
There you go.
Smartboard.
So in your monthly packets, you'll get a district financial report. That is the thick report that you have in your packet. That consists of a trial balance. The trial balance is nothing more than a balance sheet. It shows what we own, what we owe, and it also shows what our reserves are and our fund balance. So that's what that document shows you. You will also see a revenue status report to date for the month ended. In your packet today is the revenue and appropriation status reports through September the 30th. So that's all of the activity from July 1st through September the 30th. You'll also see another separate report. It's called a management discussion and analysis. This is the report you really should concentrate on. What it does is it provides a brief narrative of where we are with our revenues, where we are with our expenditures, and also it gives a summary of that large packet that you received with the financial statements. You also get a treasurer's report, and the treasurer's report is the reconciliation of all of our bank accounts. You get a budget transfer report, and some of these reports have been added over the last few years as in addition to ones that are required. But the budget transfer report is something that was added, and it shows all of the transfers from all of the funds. Now, you'll see in the board packet today that you have 2 budget transfers that the board is going to approve. And what that does is the board has to approve any budget transfer from one account to another that is $2,000 and over. What I give you on a monthly basis is all of the budget transfers so that you can see the activity going in between accounts.
Nancy, could you point out the reports that you added when you came to the district?
Absolutely.
That weren't required?
The ones that were not required that you get is the trial balance, management discussion and analysis, budget transfer, fund balance projection, and a reserve report. The fund balance projection report shows you where we think we're going to end up at the end of the year. So it's a long document, and it says, here's where we started, and we cost out all of our revenue and all of our expenditures all the way through to June, where we think we're gonna end up. And there's a net variance at the bottom. The net variance at the bottom of your current report should be showing that we're $4.7 million to the good right now. But that's only because we haven't settled all of the collective bargaining agreements, and we're still early on our projections. Normally, in the previous years, you haven't gotten this report until November. Then you should have a reserve report. The reserve report matches what's in the financial statement, and it shows you where we ended up, what reserves we have appropriated for the current budget year, and what those balances should be if those reserves are utilized.
Nancy, what's the process for transferring money out of the reserve account?
Well, that all depends. If it is one of our regular reserves, it has to go to the board before June. And the board says, yep, we want to use these reserves for these purposes. So it all takes board action.
We just put some money into several accounts that Tom mentioned.
Correct.
Looking at the ERS reserve.
Uh-huh.
If we wanted to transfer some money out of that to use somewhere else, then that would have to come to the board, that would have to be a,
It would have to be for the board, but the ERS reserve can only be reused to offset the ERS expense in your budget. So we would have to appropriate that in the previous year to use for the current year.
Do you have in this, like, report, does it say, I know I have it on something else, I don't know if it's on that, like, what the different restrictions are on each one of the reserves, and if there's a cap, like, I know, like, the fund balance has a cap. So, like, you know what I'm saying, like, is that written out for each one?
It isn't, but I can get that for you.
Just so, like, kind of like to your question, like, we could look at it, and
Yeah.
then
What
we
are the
could see, like,
restrictions?
well, this we
Yeah.
could move, or this we couldn't
Right.
move.
And what it does is you are limited for some of the reserves as to how much you can have in there.
Right.
The board set the limit for the capital reserves years ago. I think it was back in, I don't know, 2001 maybe,
that wasn't here.
2000.
Uh,
And
Does that
so
mean
that is,
And it's still currently in effect?
it is,
whatever that-
it still is
The
currently.
same number?
$7 million.
And so that was the same in '01, it is.
It wasn't,
Yeah, I
it
think
wasn't all one.
it wasn't on one, it was,
I was on the board when it was done. I
So-
know that, it was early on, and I,
So it's something to look at maybe. And
it is
see
something
if
to
it's
look
a-
at
in
if
the
you want
past
to
8 or 9
continue
years,
or
something.
You wanted
increase
to
that
increase
value.
it or decrease it, you
Right.
can
That's
do that
right.
through board action.
Yeah, right.
Because what's that account at now, the reserve, or
5.2,
the,
we're at
Right.
5.2 and it's allowed 7.
Right. And then what you also have to remember is the $750,000 that we took from that capital reserve, that will be refunded once the building is sold.
Right,
Yeah.
so that's,
That will
so that'll be
increase.
coming, that's kind of just laying out there and then,
so we'll be
Okay.
closer to 6.
Correct.
so yeah,
Yep.
money's on
Well,
hold.
it was up close to 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
What
not-
you also have that I put on your, on the table at your places is a history of reserves and fund balance. This shows you what the reserves have been for the last 11 years.
Where's that one?
It looks like this, it's a separate sheet of paper.
Oh,
Yeah.
right here.
There it is.
Yep.
Oh, cool.
So that was given to the board last year. I've updated it with the current numbers. Because I'm running out of space, I will probably next year drop off 2007 and add the current year.
What's really nice about this particular report, though, is it tells the financial story of what the district has done over the years. And if you start on the left and you work your way toward the middle, you bring us to the state comptroller's designation as a school at risk of fiscal stress. So you can see that that was because we were using fund balance and reserves to artificially build our budgets. And
Well-
then in the last 2 years, you see that those numbers start to increase.
I was looking at the same thing, you can see how it built back up, you see where we were, and then I see that text certiorari where we have that reserve, and from 12 to 13, it looks like we burn up $1 million, and then going into 14, we spent 3.4. Was that we took money out of that and put it someplace else, or was that to satisfy some certiorari?
Both.
Both.
So, you're right, some was transferred out to use because it was overfunded, and some was used for tax certiorari claims.
I just, I'm curious,
I don't remember the exact year, but we took some money out of tax cert, used, put towards the budget.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, like, well, what is the biggest whack that we've ever gotten in a certiorari agreement, or that is to,
That would have been probably for the steam station.
uh-huh, okay. Okay.
So that's just for you to look at after. Went through the reserve report. Extra classroom report. Now, these are reports that you get monthly. They are funds that we hold for the student club accounts. They are audited and reported separately from our financial statements. And basically, they're used for, to provide students with an outside activity. But the main part that the comptroller is interested in is that the students use these clubs to learn good business procedures that they might not get outside of the district.
So I know I brought up the gas again. 2018 is a normal number. It seems to me to be extremely high. It's 36,000.
For the club,
Class.
Class.
oh, for the class,
Yeah.
it all depends on how much fundraising they've done.
What's it
Is
say?
that accumulation of the clubs to what he's asking?
No, what happens, and maybe Dr. Sweeney can speak to the class clubs better than I.
Sure. So the class money does roll up with the class, because the senior year, there's some substantial expenses for their activities. And we also have senior trip payments have started funneling through the class of 2018. So as the kids are making payments towards the class trip, it starts to accumulate. Tammy Palmitesso is the advisor. She'll make payments as they come due, either the airline, the hotels, the trip group that takes us around while we're in Florida. We also have a chunk of money in there that came from JetBlue. I don't know if you are aware of this, but a number of years ago, the trip was booked through another airline that went bankrupt. And we were in a sad predicament because we had no way to get the kids who had already paid on the trip. And Channel 9 News did a story on it, and JetBlue stepped up and said, we'll take care of this for you. And they didn't want any payment. So even after we had the bankruptcy court settlement and the class did get a payment back towards what they had paid, JetBlue still said, no, we're good, save it for the next time something like this comes up. So there's a good chunk of money that we always call the JetBlue money, and it just rolls forward, and we save it for that rainy day whenever it might pop up again.
So I guess my concern is, the class of 2018, are they aware of that their account is relatively high?
Yep.
And
Oh,
that,
absolutely.
and that they're gonna, I guess what I'm saying is 2017 class has $13,000 left in their account. And correct me if I'm wrong, but they had to keep it tight on their common things over the last year. So I'm just making sure the current class is able to enjoy what they fundraised the last 4 years, is my question.
And some classes actually fundraise better than others.
Oh, yes.
So
Heidi's probably the best person to answer
Yeah.
that question.
financially, the kids have been okay the last couple of years. I would say it was maybe the 3 year ago senior class that was a little bit tighter. There are still, I know that Nancy and I talked to Lisa Schultzke, and there's still some outstanding bills due from the class of 2017.
Right.
Which is why you see a balance. When that account is clear, they'll roll the money forward to 2018. And the kids do all of the financials. The officers are involved, the auditor makes sure that they're learning these skills. So the advisor oversees, but the class treasurer does all of the accounting, the class president signs off on any transactions, the kids vote to spend the money, donate the money, do different things with the money. And some of the senior events, like the dinner dance, we might only charge $10 or $15 a ticket
but it's at the Foundry, and the dinner that comes with it and the DJ would cost us maybe $80 to $100 if we were going to an event there. The same thing with the senior picnic. It's at Seabreeze, they get in, there's busing there, and there's also food, tons of food provided at the event. And that, again, we only charge the kids $10 or $15, and the class pays for the remaining part.
What happens to money that they don't use?
It rolls to the next year. And they get to make some decisions. There's usually a class gift of some sort. Maybe they make a donation to a charity. They fund a couple of smaller scholarships. And the kids really have a big say in how their money is spent.
So it doesn't stay in an account, like say for like a 10-year class reunion or a 20th? Did it used to do that?
No.
How did the 17 kids get to pick what their money does at the end now?
Well, they had to make some decisions before they graduated.
I see.
And
And they know the money that's due, it just hasn't been satisfied yet?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So before they graduate and leave, because they have to sign any payment requests, all of those are sorted out. We know ahead of time how much a bill is for something, and Tammy would have met with those treasurers, the class president, what have you. And we're just waiting for those bills to clear now to get a final balance that'll roll them forward.
So it's fair to assume that of that $13,000 or $14,000 that's left over from the 17 class, how much of that would be your guess that's gonna roll to the 18 class?
I can't remember what Lisa told me.
I think there's probably anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 out in accounts payable. I think the balance was like 13,
Yep, it's 13,897, so maybe three.
or maybe 3.
Yeah, so pretty minimal as far as the whole scope of it.
Correct. And there are also procedures regarding the extra classroom clubs. They have to set up charters, they have to elect officers, they actually have a whole set of regulations on how what the clubs are supposed to be doing, and, excuse me, the safeguarding of all of the funds. There's a document from the state controller's office on this as well. Any other questions on that?
So Brian, what you were asking really is, what are the assurances that classes get to use their own money?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just getting at, it seemed before any of the senior trip money started being collected at like 18,000. So that's where they were before that. So my question is, I just want to make sure that, whether it's this year, last year, next year, that the kids are able to take full advantage of what they've done over their 4 years and not be sitting on a pile of money at the end of the year that goes.
That's
someplace
usually
else.
never the case. They raise the money purposely.
And you just always have to keep in mind that $12,000 or $13,000 from the JetBlue
Right.
settlement is always in there.
Sure.
And we're kind of stewards of that money. Tammy explains to the kids why there is that bubble, and they really choose not to spend it because they know that at some point, something will happen again to put
Yeah,
them in.
someone's gonna need it.
Yeah.
They'll need it,
May not be JetBlue then.
correct, something.
So this next slide actually tells you what funds we have. Sometimes it's difficult to understand how a school district is organized. So when in your reports, if you see something that starts with an A, excuse me, that's the general fund. That is used for all of the operating of the school district. C is the food service fund. That accounts for all the breakfast, lunch, milk programs that we get federal and state subsidies. TA is a trust and agency account. Those are for assets that are held by the district as an agency. That could be donations and gifts that are for a specific purpose that are donated to the district. And we also run all of our payroll transactions through the trust and agency account as well. TE is another trust and agency account. It's TE only to differentiate it from the TA account, but that is for all of our scholarship accounts. These are held as an agency by the district. We get reports from the counselors and the principals as to what scholarships are going to be awarded. And if someone wants to create a scholarship in someone's name, We actually have a set of protocols where they come in and they meet with John Edwards, who is our treasurer, and they go through and he sets up the scholarship fund for them. K is our inventory accounts, and that just identifies all of the capital assets in the district, which include our buildings and anything usually over $5,000. W is a long-term debt. This is for our unmatured long-term debt and liabilities. So this is the bonds that we have out that go out into the future. V is our debt service account, and that's for payment of principal and interest on long-term debt. You'll see on your report, one of your reports for the reserves, at the bottom, that we actually bring in money from the debt service account to the general fund to offset some of that on an annual basis. That can be refunded by a project that is closed out, and if the board so chooses, they can take that money and move it over to the debt service account in order to build up that. It can only be used to pay principal and interest. H is all of our capital projects that we still have. If you look through your report, they're all called all different things. It includes all of our construction projects, it includes energy performance contract that is still in effect, and all of the bonds that we have done for buses over the years. And F is the fund that we record our special aid, and that is for the special federal or state funded grants that we have to account for on an annual basis. And that's it.
So when we get the report, you're saying, so like, if it's a general fund report, then it starts with the letter A?
Starts with the
That's how
letter
we
A.
identify that that's what it is.
Correct.
Do we have a copy of this, or?
I can send it to you electronically through Karen.
Great. Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.
A couple other things from the superintendent's report. I wanted to give a shout out to the girls soccer team. They're going to be playing tonight in sectionals. Also, our boys and girls volleyball is really on fire. It's really one of our showcase athletic teams really right now is the success of our girls and boys volleyball. I wanted to point that out. I also wanted to congratulate the board because this is Board Recognition Week, and I'm sure that's why you have a caramel apple in front of you from the Layton Home School Association.
I thought the dentist sent them out.
We recognized him last year for lawn guards, remember?
Yeah.
I wanted to thank Nancy, of course, and Tom. I also wanted to mention that I've been invited to be a presenter at the 2017 New York State Association of School Administrators Conference, and I'll be presenting on Sunday and Monday in Cooperstown at the Ogasaga on leadership practices for elementary principals to integrate fully inclusive programs. And I'm going to co-present that with Linda Stumer, who works with us as a consultant, and she is certainly is a behaviorist and special education teacher extraordinaire. And the presentation is really a crosswalk between my doctoral research in elementary principal leadership practices and how those practices, each of those 5 leadership practices and the associated behaviors influence the management of inclusive education. So we're kind of marrying the work, the 20 to 28 years at Minetto programming with the current research in elementary principal leadership practice. So it's really a great thing for our school district. The other thing that I wanted to mention is there's been a lot of buzz about DASA. And as you know, I released a press release a few days ago with the help of our PR department in South Wallace. And I thought it would be important tonight to point out a few things that are not highlighted in the reports. They were not highlighted in the report from Channel 9 News, and they weren't highlighted in the subsequent report from the Pale Times, although I appreciate the Pale Times integrating components of the press release. But just for the record, let's talk about a few things that have happened relative to DASA in our district since implementation. First of all, the report that is being largely reported on is old data from 2013-14. And in 2013 and 14, all school districts were implementing very gingerly the new requirements around dignity for all students. And Oswego was no different than any other district. all districts were going through this initial growing pains of DASA. Remember too, in 2013, 14, it was a different superintendent. It was a different principal. It was a different board. We didn't have all the pieces in place, nor did any school district in our region. However, the state comptroller notified us last spring that they would like to come in and use Oswego as the regional school to take a look at DASA implementation reporting in terms of the state education department. And that piece is buried in those reports in the media. We were not audited for DASA. SED was audited and used our data. So that was a New York State Education Department audit at Oswego. And they audited our 13 and 14 data. I think some important things to point out too is that clearly this is a slow news cycle this week, because we're reporting on a snapshot in Oswego, and we're making that a headline when we have so many other great things happening in our district. And we don't need to be dwelling on things that happened in 2013 and 14, particularly because that same comptroller that came in praised our district for the growth that we'd made in DASA, investigating and reporting, and praised our administrative team and thanked us for allowing them in. Another thing that's important to say that this was about a final report not being checked. The finding in the report from the comptroller was not about our investigation of DASA reports. It was not about the training that we provided staff. It was not about the way that we dealt with parents and students. It was the fact that we had this bulk of DASA data generated from reports from students and staff, and there was a required form for the very first time where that data needed to be moved over to a state reporting form and uploaded to the New York State portal. So it would have been data that was transferred to a report, signed off by a principal, provided to a superintendent, and uploaded to the SED portal, something that we do regularly. So it wasn't about our performance with DASA, it was about a form. Since becoming superintendent, in 2 years ago now, in 2015, we have had a full comprehensive DASA administrative training twice. We've had DASA district coordinator and building coordinators trained, and they're posted in every building. Dr. Duffy is the district coordinator. Every elementary principal is the DASA coordinator for their building, along with the DASA team. Those have been in place for the last 2 years. We work with city BOCES for our comprehensive updated training annually. In fact, we bring city BOCES in on the opening day of school of the last 2 years to do a full comprehensive updated DASA training for all faculty and staff. All of our forms were revised under the leadership of Heidi Sweeney, Dr. Heidi Sweeney. In fact, now those forms are largely used across our region because Roseanne Bain, the assistant superintendent at City, uses our district as a model for DASA investigation and reporting. So I think those are important things to point out. They're not in the headlines. And if anyone would like a copy of the press release that was sent out, I'd be happy to give you one. One more thing on a lighter note. Tomorrow, the education staff, those of us at central office, are hosting an appreciation luncheon for the staff of buildings and grounds and technology for all the assistance that they gave us this summer as we moved from the old center into the new ed center. So that's something we're really looking forward to. And we thank all that staff for doing that.
What time is that?
That's at noon.
Here?
Yep.
Come in, that's a free meal.
Yeah.
I didn't say it was an invite. I said it was an announcement. All right, thank you. That's all I have, Karen.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. A, minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of October 3rd. B, minutes of the special Board of Education meeting of October 16th. C, special programs report. D, budget status report, district financial report, budgetary transfer report, fund balance projection report, reserve report for September. E is extra classroom activities fund report for Oswego Middle School for September. F is extra classroom activities fund report for the Oswego High School, September 2017. If I could have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, under the Board of Education, OCTA tentative agreement, that the Board of Education approve the OCTA tentative agreement as presented to the Board of Education. If I could have a motion?
Move it.
Second. Can we have a roll call to vote on that too, please?
At this time, roll call, James Bell,
Yes.
Amy Callen,
Yes.
Brian Chetney,
Yes.
Tom DeCastro,
Yes.
Brandon Legault,
Yes.
Linda Serino,
Yes.
Sam Tripp.
Yes.
It is a 7-0 vote. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
14-0.
Next, under curriculum, administrative recertification, that the Board of Education grants approval for the following administrators, recertification for teacher observation evaluation for the 17-18 school year as listed below. If I could have a motion?
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? B, 2017-18 federal state grant, that the Board of Education grants permission to implement the following federal programs. Title V, Rural Low Income Students, RLIS. If I could have a motion?
Move it.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is personnel, professional staff retirement, that the Board of Education accept the following personnel items as follows. Whereas Carol Carroll has served the students and staff of the school district as an elementary teacher and literacy specialist for the period September 1st, 1992 to the present, and has been the most responsible, conscientious, and dedicated staff member in service to the school district. Now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Board of Education of the Oswego City School District hereby acknowledge the faithful service of Ms. Carroll upon accepting her resignation for the purpose of retirement effective January 2nd, 2018, and we express our grateful appreciation to her. If I could have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Professional staff retirement, that the Board of Education accept the following personnel items as follows. Whereas Lori Yule has served the students and staff of the school district as an art teacher for the period September 1st, 1986 to the present, and has been the most responsible, conscientious, and dedicated staff member in service to the school district, now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Board of Education of the Oswego City School District hereby acknowledge the faithful service of Ms. Yule upon accepting her resignation for the purpose of retirement effective January 20th, 2018, and we express our grateful appreciation to her. If I could have a motion?
Move it. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? C, professional staff recommendation resignations, Sarah Aiden, special education teacher at Minetto, and Theodore Beers, girls modified volleyball coach, district. If I could have a motion?
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? D, professional staff recommendation, regular substitute, Leanne Humphreys, reading, permanent at Fitchie Park Elementary, Amanda Johnson, library media specialist at Riley Elementary. If I could have a motion?
Move it. Move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, what's the term of this? How long is this for?
The library media specialist is a replacement for the librarian at Riley, who is doing an administrative internship at City BOCES as the Director of Library Services, so it's for a year.
Okay.
We had
All
to
in-
freeze this permanent, so
Mm-hmm.
that's what we were, that's what we
See the
did.
PMT.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? E, probationary teacher assistant, Morgan Bachelor, level 3 at Riley Elementary. If I could have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? F, extra comp recommendation, Board of Education videographer, Matthew Bach. If I could have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second. I think you should get more money.
Well, that's a switch.
Sam will take care of you. Sam will take care of you after the meeting.
It's only because it's here.
Thanks, Sam.
That's the hat.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? G, extra comp recommendation, Oswego High School, Buck Bulletin Advisor Heidi Sheffield. If I could have a motion?
Move it. Second.
Any discussion?
I just wanted to have a couple, I guess, questions. So this is when, and we talked about this before in our committee meeting, how before the newspaper and the TV station were combined, and now this is, they were separated out. So there's a class where the kids can take
Correct.
this?
Journalism.
Okay, and then a class for them to do the TV. So the stipend is for,
The time outside of the class, because they're really, in journalism, they're learning the mechanics of writing stories, editing,
Right.
the layout for how the paper is produced, and then it's the time beyond the school day. They also go to conferences several times a year, and they're award-winning this program, so they get invited to some different events as well.
okay, so then they, like outside of the classroom then, they meet like at a different time? I'm just wondering just how to.
Yeah, after school, it's like a
So,
club.
oh, like a club?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The class feeds the club.
Gotcha, okay,
Similar to yearbook,
right.
can't really all get done in the
Within
period,
that.
so it's an after-school club as well.
Okay, all right, thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is H, extra comp recommendation, athletics, wrestling varsity head coach Michael Howard, indoor track co-ed varsity head coach Dominic Pike, basketball girls JV head coach Chris O'Brien, cheerleading winner JV head coach Catherine Ferletti, wrestling modified head coach Steve Bradish. If I could have a motion?
Move it. Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, the varsity wrestling head coach, Mike Howard. Is this Mike Howard's son, Mike Howard? Okay,
Mike
He was
Howard,
the-
who's our teacher.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was the modified coach last year.
all right. Just wanted to keep it straight in my head.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I support staff retirement. That the Board of Education accept the following personnel items as follows, whereas James Lucardi has served the students and staff of the school district for the period January 27, 2015 to the present, and has been the most responsible, conscientious, and dedicated staff member in service to the school district. Now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Board of Education of the Oswego City School District hereby acknowledge the faithful service of Mr. Lucardi upon accepting his resignation for the purpose of retirement from the position of school bus driver effective October 11, 2017, and we express our grateful appreciation to him. If I could have a motion?
Move.
Second? I'm sorry. second.
Brian.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? J, that the Board of Education accept the following personnel items as follows. Whereas Joe Ellen Smith has served the students and staff of the school district for the period October 16, 1996 to the present, and has been the most responsible, conscientious, and dedicated staff member in service to the school district. Now for there be it resolved that the members of the Board of Education of the Oswego City School District hereby acknowledge the faithful service of Ms. Smith upon accepting her resignation for the purpose of retirement from the position of senior account clerk typist effective December 23rd, 2017, and we express our grateful appreciation to her. Could I have a motion? Move that. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, leave of absence, Sarah Schultz, custodial worker. If I could have a motion?
Move it. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is that the Board of Education accept the following personnel items as follows. Probationary, Brandy Fortino, teacher aide at Kingsford Park Elementary. If I can have a motion?
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? M, support staff recommendation that the Board of Education accept the following personnel items as follows. Provisional, James Ferguson, custodian, Minetto Elementary. If I could have a motion?
Move it. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, N, support staff recommendations, permanent, that the Board of Education accept the following personnel items as follows. Danielle Carter, food service helper, part-time Minetto. Ann Delves, teacher aide, part-time Layton. Heather Duran, food service helper, part-time, OMS. Sarah Straight, food service helper, part-time, OHS. If I could have a motion.
Move it. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is O, substitute and temporary employees, that the Board of Education approve the following persons to serve as substitute or temporary employees as listed below. If I could have a motion.
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I just wanted to follow up on the conversation at the last board meeting. So we talked about utilizing the students at SUNY Oswego to fill in this list. Is
Yes.
that, like, are we progressing?
Heidi and I have appointments to push into the methods classes
Oh,
and
okay.
present it, and then we're gonna have to aid them in the application process, in the fingerprinting and things like that.
Okay, great.
But the school of that is excited about it.
Okay. Good news. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is finance. That the Board of Education approve the agreement with the City of Oswego for one school resource center in the amount of $64,346.12 for the school year 2017-18 as presented. Funds for this position are budgeted in account, could you tell me
It's a contractual
the
account.
contractual account? If I could have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 2, participation in the New York School and Municipal Energy Consortium bid for energy services, that the Board of Education approve the Oswego City School District participation in the New York City School and Municipal Energy Consortium bid for energy services as presented. Could I have a motion?
Move it.
Second? I'm sorry, Sam. Sam. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is proposal from E&B Insurance Agency for ACA tracking and 6056 reporting. That the Board of Education accept the proposal from E&B Insurance Agency Incorporated for the purpose of ACA tracking and 6056 reporting with the proposed cut of $12,000, which is the same as last year. If I could have a motion?
Move it. Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, just Nancy, could you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah.
What's this?
Absolutely. A couple of years ago, we were required to track employees and if we had offered them health insurance benefits. And we're required to track it, and the tracking period crosses over fiscal years. So we contracted 2 years ago with E&B Insurance to do all of the metrics and analytics that had to do with this. And then they actually create the forms that go out for tax purposes on an annual basis for us. And it's required by law.
So how are our employees that are under our health program, our health insurance, how are they affected by ACA?
We still, because all employers are required to report the, whether or not we provide benefits and how much those benefits are, and the dependents that fall under that. And it started 2 years ago. It doesn't matter who you are, all municipalities
employers.
and all public employees all have to report Affordable Care Act contributions.
And this report goes to the federal government?
Actually, it's kind of like your W-2s. So we actually have to send it all over to the IRS, and they keep track of it. And usually, for the last 2 years, you have not had to include this form in your taxes. I believe the same thing is going to be happening this year, but I have to find out more regulations on that.
Interesting.
This was, we were looking in and moving to this E&V system in hopes of offering you some efficiencies in dealing with phone calls and some of the paperwork that was involved, right?
This is a huge
Well,
help.
that's what I wanted to ask,
Because-
is if we thought it would be, I didn't know if it
It
actually.
actually is. They do all of the testing, the tracking of employees. They check to see whether or not we are actually administering our benefits correctly. So it actually is a huge help.
Right, and this is a position that we found a shortage in, right? That we used to have somebody who would handle all those benefit questions.
Well, not this part.
Oh.
This ACA tracking is relatively new. As I said, it was, this came from the Obamacare administration. And actually, we don't know what they're doing with the data. We have some ideas of what they're doing with the data. But none of that has come up yet as law. So, you know, this is a huge piece of
Jim, I
tracking.
think what you're referencing is when we moved from one group, which was our third-party administrator, to ENV, it was for a variety of reasons. One was that they were gonna provide additional service that we didn't have, and you're right. We used to have a health,
Someone who could field the
Benefit
questions of all the
benefits
employees.
coordinator, right.
And I know that was,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that the decision that we made, that this company was following through and doing everything we wanted.
And they
to.
are, they have actually implemented a call center at all of our meetings. We send employees, we have cards that we hand out. If they have any questions regarding their dental, their health, any of the other benefits, they call the call center, and they act as an intermediary with our health insurance company and our dental company.
and our healthcare committee, they meet with them regularly, and they also provide reporting. They also were really instrumental in moving some of the things that we moved through collective bargaining. They helped market some of those changes, met with focus groups, did presentations and things about some of the things.
People understand the
that we
changes that
moved
might,
to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? D, acceptance and recognition of dictionary donations from the Oswego Elks 271 to the Oswego City School District, that the Board of Education accept and recognize a donation of dictionaries for all third graders in the Oswego City School District from Oswego Elks Lodge 271 as presented. Could I have a motion?
Move it. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? E, contract with Oswego AmeriCorps Agency, that the Board of Education approve a contract with the Oswego AmeriCorps Agency for one 900-hour AmeriCorps member in the amount of $2,674 and one 450-hour AmeriCorps member in the amount of $1,378 as presented. Could I have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, that's out of a federal Layton school account?
No, this is for Layton School.
How's it paid for, he's asking.
It's
No,
in
I
the
can
general
see
fund
it
budget.
Budgeted in the Layton school account, but they're only gonna be used at Layton school?
Yes.
Do we have that service in other schools?
No, it's always been at Layton.
It's a good question. I'm gonna have to abstain because this is from my office.
We'd love it
It
to be
could be in
open.
every school.
Yeah.
Capabilities.
Yeah.
How is that determined?
It was at Riley at one point, years ago.
That's what,
Just a
you
plug.
just apply. Would that be the building principal that would apply, or would it?
Could be. Could be.
Okay.
We go through the building principal.
Each
and
one
we
has to
clear
have a
by
site
this
supervisor.
process.
Okay.
So I'm abstaining from that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And Brian, I have you as abstaining. F, contract with SBT team, that the Board of Education approve the contract with the SBT team to provide bus driver training on an as-needed basis for the 17-18 school year as presented. The cost will not exceed $5,000, the same as the prior year, and will be paid from transportation account. If I could have a motion.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? G, budgetary transfer of funds request, that the Board of Education approve the following transfers as presented within the 2017-18 budget. Amount of transfer $3,000 from the Light and Power B&G account to the B&G rental account. And it is for the rental fees for 2 40-foot storage containers for 1 year. If I could have a motion.
Move it. Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Nancy, is that 3,000, is that the total cost, or is that just what you needed to?
That's just what we needed to cover the rest of the Verity trailers.
Because I thought that was, I was gonna rent one of those if it was only 1,500. I'm gonna live in it.
They're hot.
Put it down on the
Really
beach,
hot.
so it's right there.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next would be a transfer of 2,191 from the Oswego High School co-curricular to the OHS part-time professional. And the reason for the cost is the Buck Bulletin Advisor. If I could have a motion.
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
And that's that's the stipend that we talked about earlier, that is right there.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next on the agenda is items from the board. Would any board members have any items tonight?
I have a couple things. The first thing I wanted to bring up was that we have the Facebook page. I know we started the discussion last year about, getting with the times, I guess, so to speak, and having a Facebook page for our district, and it is up and running. And I just wanted to say that because I know there was some confusion. I had some teachers say, oh, really, I didn't know that we had that. And then I had some friends who tried to go on the link. I talked to Jamie, and they, for whatever reason, I don't know why they couldn't get on. I couldn't get on, but then I tried the second time and I did. So I didn't know if you heard from anybody else, or if it
No,
was.
that was the first I heard it, unless they tried before we actually,
Got live.
we sat together and created it.
Right,
And then Seth and I actually, published it
right.
a short time after that, a couple days after. So if it was in that median time,
It could've
prior
been.
to when we talked, when we talked, it was
Right,
live
yeah,
at that
because then when
point,
you
so-
and I spoke, then I tried it, and then I
Right.
got on, and then I was like, okay, that's weird, because I couldn't get on before, so I don't know if you tried it. So, now who, just out of curiosity, so like, you manage it, right, Jamie, but who, so then does that mean you are the one who chooses what goes onto it, or like, how does that all?
Reluctantly,
Work.
he monitors it, people watch it regularly,
Okay,
and the service is part of our poster for our PR.
okay, yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. So
Yeah,
do they
that's
do any of the
creation.
legwork to
Seth
like get
is-
stories, or?
That's
Yes.
helping a lot.
Okay,
It's kind of a collaboration between Seth and myself, and
Gotcha.
we both have administrative rights to post onto it.
okay.
So if there is something that.
And you're the only two who can put things on,
There's, I believe Naomi does too, right?
Yeah, my boss
Okay.
at CPR.
okay,
And there'll be some associated policies that we're gonna be bringing to the policy committee soon that we need to revisit relative to social media,
right.
including Facebook, because we rushed the launch of this, and we need to clean up some policies now to protect ourselves.
Gotcha, yeah.
So that'll be.
We're very limited in what we can put on there right now because of board policies that are in
Oh,
place.
okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Yep.
yeah, because I know I had said the thing about, the Gary
Yeah, Carpentier.
Carpentier, who I was like, that'd be a cool story to feature on Facebook and highlight our, theater and music program, and the fact that he, graduated from here and went on to The Voice, so. But anyway, so that was that, and then the other thing is the recent discussion that we all have had about the, bringing back of the, quote unquote duplicate sports, so I think we
There was a
need to-
lot of conversation about bringing back some duplicate sports at the modified level, and Rhonda and I met multiple times, and we eventually brought Nancy into the mix as well. There is a demand based on participation rates over the years for duplicate boys and girls basketball at modified level, as well as a second girls volleyball modified team, and the possibility of a second boys baseball, based on need and demand. So we came to a place where I felt very comfortable making the recommendation that we consider the reinstatements, and they haven't gone to the board for reinstatement yet because there's some question about funding. Initially, when the Buck Boosters came to me and to Rhonda, that's why I called you back, Rhonda, I thought you might be able to contribute to this conversation. There was a proposal that if we agreed and I was willing to make a recommendation to reinstate those duplicate teams, and in fact, this would be the first year that we wouldn't have those duplicate teams, that they would split the cost. And I know that there's different feelings among the board about how we should fund this, because it wasn't built into the original 17-18 budget. Nancy's been digging and looking for funds to fund this should the board decide that we will fund it fully. But I wanted the board to have an opportunity, and I was going to bring this into executive session, but it doesn't fall under the purview of executive session. So it was best to have it come up now just for an open conversation so we can move forward. We already have done anticipated postings for coaches. Rhonda has moved forward with the scheduling, the necessary conversations with the league, and now we just have to settle on how we're going to fund.
What are we looking at for cost, total cost for the,
It should not exceed $30,000.
say again?
It shouldn't exceed $30,000.
And that would be,
All sports?
yeah,
Is that
for all
taking-
three, right?
Four.
Is it four, does that take into consideration the new contract?
There's some
That
extra
would
in
be
there
over.
for
It
the,
would be
yes.
it would be the new
Raise?
coaching.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
coaching stipend.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's reduced.
so it could be
Yeah.
less.
Could be.
What it previously
Could be
meant to be
less.
less.
Right, but it also depends on transportation and how the league will schedule their games and how frequently we travel, how far we travel. So the number's a little, but we feel comfortable that it would not exceed 25 to 30,000.
Right, and it's based off, all of this talk, all of these decisions are based on the demand. We've got somewhere between 38 and 46 kids going out for a 22 person team, right?
At least.
Right.
Jim, we're settled on the reinstatement.
I understand.
We got it.
I'm trying to define the request of it is our students, right?
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know if we're looking to share opinions or if we want to do this, yeah. It's my opinion that the district, the board should vote to carry the cost and the responsibility of this for our students. I think it's the boosters' responsibility to help support the athletic program, not sustain it. And I really think that this is our responsibility and that we should carry that.
I agree.
That's why I wanted this conversation.
Yep.
I agree with you totally.
And the cost for the duplicate teams for transportation, there's no extra cost because the teams travel together and then they play either at the same time with two different gyms in the same building, or they'll play at 4:30 and 6. So that expense is already covered with
It's already
one
there.
team.
Right.
So you're just adding the other team on the bus, so there's no additional cost for transportation.
Rhonda, we, a couple of years ago, we had duplicate teams, so I assume there's still uniforms and,
Yes, we have uniforms, we have schedules that are all solidified and created right now. I'm just waiting on 2 more games for the modified girls, which doesn't start till January 2nd. And then they're gonna have a full schedule as well, so I'm just waiting to hear back from the
And we've already
opposing
posted for
school.
the coaches.
Yeah, and we did already post for the coaches, and so I already have people that are
so other than officials, there really isn't,
pretty much, yeah. And we've already sent the schedules to the assigners, so they're working on the officials end of it anyway, so,
Most of the cost is coaching.
yeah.
Right. The rest of it's
Yeah.
kind of there.
we can give those sports back for $30,000, I think that's definitely a win.
Is there consensus for that?
I think
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
really, Tom and I are in
Yeah,
agreement.
sure.
That's it. Thanks, Rhonda, sorry to hold you up. I
Oh,
know
no,
you're-
that's okay, we're just gonna head out. Thank you.
Brian,
Go watch
Hopefully
your dog.
everybody comes out to
Go
the
watch
game.
them play.
We're gonna go into
Thank
an
you.
executive session very briefly, but I'll brief you tomorrow on it. No decision's gonna be made. I'm just getting opinion on a negotiation.
Go support the
So
soccer
you
team and
can
win.
call me tomorrow. So you're not gonna miss weighing in on anything?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Any other items from the board? And Dr. Gui, I assume there is an executive session
Yes,
tonight?
there is.
And could I get a reason?
Negotiations.
And could I have a motion, please?
We're gonna negotiate match rates.
All in
No, we already
favor?
agreed.
We
All in
already
favor?
decided you're paying for it. Aye.
You may move to executive session.